Pre-built mini PC are ridiculously expensive, and there's no way I could justify paying that kind of money for one. So instead, I decided to do something a little different. I built my own mini gaming PC for just $170. The entire system fits into a 7-liter case, small enough to toss into a backpack and take anywhere, yet powerful enough to play all the games I actually want to play. And yes, this isn't some stripped-down setup either. It has all the core components you'd expect from a full-sized gaming PC, just packed into a much smaller form factor. But this build wasn't just about throwing parts together and hoping for the best. Every component choice was carefully planned to squeeze out the best performance possible while staying on a tight budget. In this 9 minutes video, I'll walk you through that entire process, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the build. The first thing that determines the size of any PC build is the case, so that's where I started. My goal was pretty simple. It had to fit a single fan, dual slot graphics card. That was non-negotiable. I checked Amazon first, but honestly, the prices were kind of insane. Some of these cases cost more than my entire budget. eBay had a few cheaper options, but most of them were heavily used and looked pretty rough. After digging around for a while, I finally settled on this, the T40 Mini ITX case, and it only cost me $30. The dimensions are 206 millimeters tall, 130 millimeters long, and 46 millimeters wide, which works out to roughly a 7-liter volume. It's surprisingly well ventilated too, since 3 of the outer panels are fully mesh. The case supports a standard 17 by 17 centimeter mini ITX motherboard, a dual-slot GPU up to 200 millimeters in length, and an SFX power supply. Once I locked in those limitations and understood exactly what I was working with, it was time for the more challenging part, finding the rest of the components that could fit inside this tiny frame without destroying the budget. The next part was actually harder to find than I expected the motherboard. Not because it's rare, there are plenty of them out there. The real problem? The price. Almost everything I found was over $50, which just didn't make sense for this kind of build. Eventually, I came across a B75M motherboard on AliExpress for just $22, and surprisingly, it had pretty solid user reviews. More importantly, it had everything I needed, including an NVMe-M2 slot, which honestly caught me off guard. And visually, it looks almost brand new. For those who don't know, boards like this usually come from China. Manufacturers often salvage chipsets from dead or damaged boards and mount them onto newly produced PCBs. Reusing components like that actually makes a lot of sense. It reduces waste, helps the environment a bit, and gives us a much lower price. I don't really see anything wrong with that, unless of course it dies a few months later. Now the design is a little funny. The M2 slot is basically sitting right on top of the chipset heatsink, and technically B75 was never meant to officially support NVMe in the first place. So yeah, it's definitely a creative interpretation of what a B75 board should be, but for $22. Once I had the motherboard sorted out, everything else became a lot easier. Next up, the CPU. On this socket, we actually have quite a few options. I decided to go with something more on the high-end side, mainly because prices have dropped so much over the years. In terms of performance per dollar, it's really hard to beat the Xeon E3 series without integrated graphics. The one I picked is the Xeon E31270 V2. Performance-wise, it's basically on par with an i7-3770. You get 4 cores, 8 threads, a base clock of 3.5 GHz, and a max turbo of 3.9 GHz. And the best part? I only paid $23 for it. For cooling, I'm keeping things simple and cheap. A standard Intel stock cooler is more than enough for this chip, and you can find one for around $4. As for RAM, I don't really have many options here. It's DDR3 only on this platform. I went with 2 8GB sticks costing $14 each, so that's $28 total. At this point, I've spent about $107 on this build so far. I still need about 3 or 4 more components, and honestly, fitting everything into a $170 budget is getting tight. Next up, the part that really decides our frame rate, the GPU. My goal was simple. It has to fit the case and it can't blow up my budget. Sounds easy, right? Not really. Most GPU that pair well with the Xeon E3 are still going for over $50, which just doesn't work for this build. But then I got lucky. I found a single fan GTX 1050 Ti for just $20. Now, it's not perfect. The seller was very clear the fan is dead and only one HDMI output works. But honestly, I can live with that. I've got a pile of broken GPU lying around, so replacing the fan isn't a big deal. I just need to find one with a similar size and mounting layout. The slightly trickier part is dealing with the proprietary fan connector on the PCB. It's not exactly textbook engineering, but if it spins, it cools. And at $20, I'm not going to complain. As long as it works, we're in business. Now that I've got all the major components, the next thing I need is a power supply, and honestly, this is where the budget starts to hurt. Brand new PSU are still pretty expensive, and even used OEM units aren't exactly cheap enough to make a big difference. So I went digging through my pile of old parts, and I found something interesting. An old pre-built case with an SFX power supply inside. On the label it says 550 watts, but realistically most of that power is on the 12-volt rail, and it's probably closer to just over 200 watts usable. That said, for this specific build, it should still be enough. Since I don't actually know its real market value, I looked up similar units online to get a rough estimate. After searching for a bit, I found a 300-watt unit selling for around $20, so I'm going to use that as a symbolic price for mine. Next up, a part that's absolutely essential for an ITX case like this, the PCIe riser cable. Now, PCIe 4.0 risers are pretty expensive, so to keep things reasonable, I went with a PCIe 3.0 riser for about $20. For this specific layout, I need a 180-degree folded riser like this one. If you buy a straight version, it simply won't fit inside the case. And the last component we need is storage. Since the budget is already tight, I'm sticking with a used 128GB SATA SSD for $10. If I had more room in the budget, I'd definitely go with an NVMe.2 drive. Not just for speed, but also because it keeps the build cleaner and more compact. So, adding everything up, we're sitting at $177 total. That's for a complete PC build, not including peripherals like keyboard and mouse. Before I put everything together, I always like to test the parts outside the case just to make sure nothing's dead on arrival. Thankfully, everything powered on and worked perfectly. So now, give me a minute and I'll assemble the whole thing. After quite a bit of struggle, I finally managed to squeeze everything into this tiny 7-liter case. Overall, it actually looks pretty clean, compact, tidy, and surprisingly, there's still some room left if I ever want to upgrade something later on. But there is one thing that kind of bothers me. Power supply is in black, and the cables are all different colors. It completely breaks the color consistency of the build. If you have a bigger budget, I definitely recommend going with a fully modular PSU in an all-black color scheme. It just makes everything look much cleaner. That said, aesthetics aren't as important as performance. And with ITX systems, the real concern is always thermals and noise. Based on my testing, noise levels are reasonable, not too loud. And under full load, the CPU peaks at around 72 degrees Celsius, which is perfectly acceptable. So after swapping in a different cooler, I decided to test the GPU's performance and, more importantly, the temperatures using Heaven Benchmark. And honestly, I was pretty surprised. Under full load, the GPU stayed incredibly cool, hovering at around just 62 degrees Celsius. That's seriously impressive considering it was running at 100% usage the entire time. Now let's talk about performance. At full HD resolution with medium settings, this card delivered an average of around 77 frames per second. The lowest dip I saw was 25 frames per second, while the peak went all the way up to 149 frames per second. Overall, that's a very healthy and playable range for 1080p gaming. Based on these results, it's clear that this GPU can handle full HD gaming really well. Temperatures are under control, performance is solid, and for this level of hardware, I'd say that's a big win. Everything is running stable so far, so now it's time for the real test. What can this compact little PC actually play in 2026? For consistency, I'm sticking to full HD resolution across all the games. First up, we have a pretty demanding FPS title when it comes to graphics Counter-Strike 2 running at low settings. As you can see, the FPS can sometimes go over 100. Which feels super smooth. But when things get intense, like heavy action scenes or close-range fights, the frame rate can drop down to around 30 FPS. Now, that might sound a little concerning, but overall, the game spends most of its time staying above 60 frames per second. And for a small form factor system like this, that's honestly not bad at all. Next up is Minecraft. At a 32-chunk render distance, performance is actually pretty impressive. While walking through forests, frames per second can reach up to 140. But when flying high and looking down where the system has to render way more chunks frames per second, FPS drops to around 60, sometimes a bit lower. Still, that's very solid for this hardware. I also tested the Bliss shader. With render distance set to 8 chunks and graphics on fast, the system delivered a stable 45 to 50 frames per second. I played for a while and didn't notice any major frame drops or stuttering. Overall, Minecraft runs surprisingly well on this setup, even with shaders enabled. Next up is a real AAA test Cyberpunk 2077. Even on low settings, both the CPU and GPU are maxed out, and FPS sits around 30. Not a huge number, but for a story-driven game like this, it's still playable. And after building my very first ITX PC from scratch, picking the parts, putting everything together, and actually using it, I have to say, it was a really fun experience. Challenging, but fun. If you've got the budget, I honestly think you should try building one at least once. Now I have a compact PC that I can basically take anywhere as long as there's a monitor monitor or a TV, I'm good to go. So what do you guys think about this mini PC build? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below.